Hi, all. Welcome to the Using Pressbooks Results in D2L Brightspace training session today. I'm Steele Wagstaff. I'm glad to see those of you here in person, and those of you who registered but couldn't attend, hope you enjoy the recording. So just as a kind of way of context setting, what we're going to be talking about today is a tool called Pressbooks Results. And Pressbooks Results is essentially a way to transform what would have historically been a more passive reading experience into active learning, where students are completing embedded quizzes or other formative assessments as they read a Pressbooks chapter. You can have as many of these H5P activities or quizzes as you want in a given chapter. And Pressbooks will be configured for grading so that that given Pressbooks chapter will be associated with a line item in the gradebook. When students attempt the activity from the LMS, their grade will be automatically sent to the gradebook, and instructors and students will also have a drill down view where they'll be able to see student performance on individual assessments or activities within a given chapter. We think it's really great for practice learning, for formative assessment, and for making the learning process a bit more active, especially as they prepare for higher stakes assessments or for writing assignments or other forms of assessment you might do in your course. We hope that will complement teaching and learning at your institutions and drive some of the goals that you have for open publishing and creating high levels of student engagement and student success. So what I want to start with is I'm going to share my screen and show you the steps that are needed in Pressbooks to use Pressbooks Results and configure it for grading. You will log into your book and you'll see a book dashboard that looks like this. Once you've created content, you'll also need to make gradable H5P activities. I'm assuming that everybody here is already familiar with H5P activities, but if you haven't used them before, you can click the plugins menu from the dashboard on the left, and you'll find an H5P option, and then you would need to click Activate. You can tell that H5P is active in this book because the left nav bar has an H5P content option. And this is the place that you would go to see all of your existing H5P content or to create new quizzes or other assessments. When you click Add New, you'll see all the different activity types that are available, and you will create your activities. When you're creating and adding H5P activities, you'll see there's 50-something different H5P activity types. Not all of them can be automatically graded, and we have a list here of activities that we recommend and what we think work especially well with Pressbooks Results. These are all activity types that can be automatically graded. They'll show up well in our Pressbooks Results Viewer and are generally accessible. So if you're thinking about which activity types will work best with Pressbooks Results, you can refer to our guide chapter and this list of about 15 of the available types. In this scenario, I'm assuming you've already created H5P activities and you've already added them to your book. So I'm going to edit a sample chapter, and I'll come down to the bottom, and let's imagine that I hadn't added this H5P activity, but I wanted to. The way to add H5P activities to a chapter is to click the Add H5P button, and then to find the activity that you want to insert. In this case, I want to end this chapter with the reflection essay. So if you've done that in a chapter, and you've added your gradable H5P activities, the only thing that's needed to do is to configure your chapters for grading. In Pressbooks, beneath the chapter, you should see an LMS grade reporting box. If this is not visible, it means that Pressbooks Results is not active on your network, and you'll need to contact your network manager, or we can help them do that. But if it is visible, it's visible because Pressbooks Results is available, and you can configure a chapter for grading. To configure a chapter for grading, it's just two simple steps. First, we select this checkbox to say, I want to include all of these H5P activities for grading, and then I want to select a grading scheme. There's three options available for grading scheme. First option, or first attempt, average attempt, and best attempt. First attempt means that the first time the student tries this activity, we'll take their score, we'll add it to their first attempt on this activity, plus their first attempt on this activity, their first attempt on this activity, and their first attempt on this activity. And we'll add those scores together and send that to the gradebook. If they retake the assessment multiple times, their score won't be updated. It will only be their first attempt on each of the 5. Average attempt means we'll take the average of all attempts on this activity, plus the average of all attempts on this activity, plus the average of all attempts on this activity, and so forth. So if I, for example, I took this fill in the blank quiz and I scored a 2 out of 4 the first time and a 4 out of 4 the second time, we would send 3 out of 4 as the average score for this activity, along with the average for all the other attempts. And then best attempt means best attempt, your best score on each activity is what gets summed and sent to the gradebook. There's different pedagogical reasons why you might choose each of these. For me, I think of this mainly as a formative assessment tool where I'm giving students lots of opportunities to practice. And so with my pedagogy, I would usually select best attempt or average attempt. If your focus for you is more on, I want you to pay attention and do this right the first time, then first attempt might work best for you. So I'm going to select best attempt and I'm going to click save. That's it. That's how you configure a chapter for grading. What we'll now do is we're going to repeat this process for the remaining chapters that I've already pre-selected. So I'll come to my next chapter. This is going to be a language instruction example. Again, I'll scroll down to the bottom. I'll select the activities I want to include, and I'll pick a grading scheme. On this, I just want to stress our recommendation is include all of the activities that are available for grading, unless you have a very strong reason not to include them, because it will be confusing if a student's going through an activity and they're seeing a bunch of assessments, they do them, they'll probably expect that that will be part of their overall grade, unless they're told otherwise. So if you decide, hey, I don't actually want to include this activity in the grade report, you should clearly indicate in writing in the actual assignment and probably in your instructions that this particular quiz is just a practice quiz and won't count to their grade. But generally, we'd recommend include all of them. And then with grading scheme, it's probably best to be consistent from activity to activity within a course. If you do change the grading scheme, it's helpful to let students know in the assignment instructions, this one will be using average or best or whatever. So since I already chose best, I'll choose best again, and I'll save that. So the configuration process again will come down, we'll select all the items for grading, and we'll change it to best attempt and click save. So that is the way that you configure chapters for grading in Pressbooks. Okay, so now that we've configured the chapter for grading in Pressbooks, now it's time for us to come to the LMS, and we'll come to our D2L or Brightspace course. Here I have a sample course. As the instructor, I've got my introduction to the course. I've got like a how to use the course, some readings to do. I've got a sample chapter, and then I have a discussion forum. I want to include some graded Pressbooks reading assignments. Most people work in modules or submodules, and so within a module in Brightspace, we're going to click Existing Activities, and you're going to try to find something that says Pressbooks Content Selector, or it may be the name of your Pressbooks network. Your LMS admin will have named the tool, and hopefully it will have something like Pressbooks or Pressbooks Content Selector in the title. When you click this button, what it will do is it will bring up a deep linking selector interface. And this will show me all of the Pressbooks content on the Pressbooks network that I have access to. So because I'm using grading and Pressbooks results, I want to bring in the Pressbooks Results Viewer. Here's the demo book that I was just configuring, and you'll see this is all of the content in that book. I could simply add everything in the book by clicking that checkbox, or I could select individual activities. When you read them, you'll see here's the book title, here's the chapter title, and you'll see one of two options. It will either be a linked resource or it will be a graded assignment. A linked resource means it's just a chapter that has not been configured for grading. So students will be able to view it and read it. They'll see the live version of the chapter, but there'll be no gradebook association and no exchange of grades. These ones here are the three that you saw me configure for grading earlier. Because they've been configured for grading, at this stage of the process, Pressbooks knows they're graded assignments, and it will bring these three things in as graded assignments. So I'll just bring in one that's not and one that is to show you the difference. And I'll click Select Content. You can do this as many times as you like. What will happen is it will bring in a link to the live version of the chapter, which means you can import it, and then you can go and make edits in Pressbooks and don't have to re-import later. The only time you would need to re-import is if it was previously not configured for grading and you did configure it for grading, or you decided not to actually configure it for grading. That's the only distinction that needs to be made at the time of import. So once I've done that, you'll see here in the Reading Assignments module, I now have these links. This is the Pressbooks Results Viewer, and these are my graded assignments, and here is the one that's not graded. So this activity here will automatically be brought in and associated. I'll open it and just show you as an instructor. This is going to be the live version of this chapter that has embedded quizzes. And in D2L, it's showing this as a required element, it's visible to students, and it's associated with an assessment, which means a gradebook item. The gradebook item it's associated with is this thing. It's the literature, Lorraine Niedecker, Black Hawk held. And I could add a start date, an end date, a due date. I could add some release conditions. Anything I want to kind of control how students take this assessment and when can be done just in the normal D2L setting. If I want to change the grade value or the configuration, then I need to come into grades. And so what we'll see for this one, here is the sample assignment. By default, all of the Pressbooks graded activities will just come into the gradebook as worth 10 points each. But you may not want it to be worth 10 points. You might want it to be worth something else. So here we'll click Edit, and we'll say this, I want to put it in a category. Maybe I want to create a category for the Pressbooks reading assignments and weight that as 10% of the grade or what have you. In this case, I want to make this worth 20 points, and I want to exclude it from the final grade calculations just for practice. I can choose a grade scheme. I can display all of the different display options. I don't really know what you choose to do, but in this case, we'll click Save and Close. And it's just warning me if students have already taken this, this might cause problems, but nobody's taken this yet, so I'm configuring it. And then for this activity, let's edit this one and make this worth 30 points. So I'm going to come in and do the same thing. We'll make that 30 points, and we'll click Save and Close. So here, I've just imported Pressbooks activities as graded chapters, and I've configured them in my gradebook. I'm logged in as a student in this course. So let me refresh this page, and the students will see, okay, I'm going to come into this course. I'm in the introduction, and I want to read about this chapter. So this is a Pressbooks chapter that is not a graded assignment. It's just being launched via LTI. And what the learner sees is the live version of the content here. They can read it. And then I can also navigate and say, let's go to the next activity. So as a student, I'm now launching the Pressbooks graded assignment. I'm viewing this here. I'm going to go full screen just to remove distractions. And I'm going to read down and start taking this assessment. Okay, I got that one right. I read this poem. I'm going to do this quiz and not do so well. I only got one of the 5. Let's try, there's a multi-part quiz here. Got that one wrong. I'm going to move to the next activity. I did that one correct. Correct. And then we'll check that. And I got 2 out of 4. When there's a multi-part activity, the only important thing to remind students is they'll need to click the Finish button because that's what records or submits their overall attempt on this activity. So you can see I have a score now, 4 out of 7. I'm going to scroll down. There's even more in this activity. There's audio and video. And then here's another 3-part quiz. So I'll take this quiz. I didn't do so well on that. And didn't do so well on that. And finally, I did poorly on that. But I'm going to finish this. And I'll come into my final assessment. And it's an essay. I'm just writing kind of nonsense here. And I got 1 out of 3 based on the automatic evaluation and the rubric. And here's the pre-built feedback based on my response. So on this quiz, you can see I scored 1 out of 3, 0 out of 4. So I've got a 1 out of 7 so far. Then 4 out of 7, that gives me 5 out of 14, 6 out of 19, 7 out of 20. So I scored a 7 out of 20 overall on this assignment. If I come into the gradebook, I'm going to view this activity and I'll see that I scored, in fact, 7 out of 20, which is a 35%. I didn't do so well. This one, I believe, was configured for best attempt, but let's find out as a student, how did I earn that grade? And that's where the Pressbooks Results Viewer really comes in handy. So if I look at the Pressbooks Results Viewer, the student view will present to them a list of all of the activities in the course that are done via Pressbooks. So I'll click on this Niedecker Black Hawk Held one, and I will see a drill down here of how I did on this. First, I'll see this is using the best attempt. That's nice. It was out of 20 total points, and here are the points that I earned. So I earned a 1 out of 1 on the true false. Let's look at my score on this one. I did this fill in the blanks question, and if I want, I could see the actual question again and remind myself, oh yeah, that's what the question was. I've only taken one attempt. It was made at this time, and I got a 1 out of 5. I answered this question correctly, and I answered these as blanks, and I got them all wrong because they were blank. So I can review my performance and say, oh, that's one that I need to go back and really improve my performance on. I can also see I got a 4 out of 7, 0 out of 1. And I could click any one of these to drill down and see how I did. Let's go back and say, I want to reattempt this activity, and I only really want to focus on this quiz to see if I can do better. So I'll come back into reading assignments. As a student, I'm going to relaunch this activity. I'm going to give it another shot. And I'm going to skip over the other assessments. I don't have to do them. I'm just going to do the one that I struggled with. I'll get this one wrong again, but I'll get the rest of them right. So here you can see I scored a 4 out of 5. Because this activity lets me retry it, I can just click the retry button and do as many times as I want. So let me just retry this one more time, and I'll say, here I got a 5 out of 5. So now when I come back into grades, I'll see my score has been updated. I now have an 11 out of 20 on this. And if I view my results viewer, this is here in real time, I will see the last 2 attempts I made and how I did on them. So let's jump down into the activity. Let's look, I now have a 5 out of 5, and I can see the first attempt was a 1, the second attempt was a 4, here's what I entered, and the third attempt, I got a 5 out of 5, and here's how I did. So for me as a student, I can readily see how my grade was calculated, where in the book I need to, or the chapter I need to focus to improve my performance, and decide whether I want to invest the time and energy in improving my performance if this is in fact a best score or an average score grade. I'm going to leave the student view, and I'll pause and take some questions about any questions about how the student would use Pressbooks Results or the Pressbooks Results Viewer. The question from Andrea was, how do you get to the Pressbooks Results Viewer? Well, the way that you do that is when you're setting up the course and you're bringing in your content, let's come down to this module. When you click Existing Activities, you're going to pick the Pressbooks Content Selector. And the first option in the selector is the link called the Pressbooks Results Viewer. You only have to insert it once in your course because it will have a drop down for all of your assignments. But if you're using Pressbooks Results, you want to bring in the Pressbooks Results Viewer. And then it's just a link that appears in your course, and you can move it around. You can put it anywhere you want. Let's say I want to put it in the introduction section or the introduction module. This link is the Pressbooks Results Viewer. And so you would provide students with instructions for how to access it and put it in a location that they know they could find it. Here, I'm going to launch the Results Viewer as an instructor and show you there's a couple of differences in your view. The student view only sees this single student, their performance. This is not the greatest example because I only have one test student that's done it, but what you would see is your whole class roster, every student. You'd be able to search through the students and filter by name, and you would see individual performance. You'd be able to navigate through assignments, move previous or next. You could also move, there's pagination if you have a lot of students on it, so it doesn't display all at once. And the other thing you have as an instructor is if there's some students that have been telling you, hey, I'm doing the activity, but my grade's not showing up or it's not correct, you can report a grading issue here as an instructor and let us know who the student is and the assignment that they're having problems with and any details about the grade issues. To date, we really don't have grading issues. The most common issue that we experience is a student forgets to press the finish button on a multi-part assessment, and then they'll know that because they'll have a little dash that shows that activity has no score or hasn't been complete. But that's generally how it works, and that's what's available to instructors. You can put that anywhere you want, but the Pressbooks Results Viewer is pretty handy and nice to have for understanding student performance and drilling down a bit deeper. Janelle asked a question, which is, do you have to be the author of the Pressbook to bring the content into the LMS? The answer to that is no. When you open the content viewer, you will see any content on your network that you have a role in of any kind. So you need to be at least, currently you need to be at least a subscriber in the book. So you will only be able to insert content for which you have a role in the book. but you don't have to be an author or a book admin. So if, for example, your colleague has written a book and they don't want to let you edit the book, but they want you to be able to insert it in your course, they could add you to the book as a subscriber, which means you can view private content. And then that book would then show up in your content selector. So you have to have some role in the book. We have been discussing, there's some consideration about whether we would display all public books on a network in that content selector. I think there's still some debate and some conversations among network managers about whether they want that as a feature. And then we'll probably need to improve the UI of the content selector because in some cases, that's just going to get enormous. There's some networks that have thousands of public books, and that would be really overwhelming for an instructor who's like, I just want to find my one book. So we'll need to probably introduce some better navigation and search if we do implement that feature. So for now, you have to have a role. Yeah, Crystal, I will be, I'll process the recording and I'll send it in, half an hour or so when it's done recording. So those are the great questions. That was the tour, and that is what you can do with Pressbooks and Pressbooks Results. We hope that your instructors find this clear and straightforward to use. There is a guide chapter for every part of the process that I just described. I will share my screen and show you the guide, and I'll put the links in here. So in our user guide, there is a section that's called Use Pressbooks Results with your LMS for grade pass data. There is a video here that gives a high-level overview, like 7 minutes, where I describe what Results is and how to use it. The video here uses Canvas, so maybe this recording will be better for your D2L folks. But the next step is how to add gradable activities to your book, which activity types to use, and then the whole process about H5P. This guide chapter is all about configuring a chapter for grading, which is what I showed at the very beginning, picking a grade scheme. And then we have a chapter about adding it to the LMS, and you'd want to go to the Brightspace specific. It just describes that process of existing activities, the Pressbooks content selector, picking the ones that are graded activities and bringing them in, and then how to update the grades view or the gradebook item. And then finally, there's a chapter about using the Pressbooks Results Viewer and what you see and how to navigate that. If there's anything else that we can do to support the teaching and learning that happens at your institution or instructors, please do let us know. We know that the start of the term is a busy and sometimes stressful time, and anything we can do to make that load lighter and help you focus on what matters most, we'd be happy to.